Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I am calling to order the City of San Leandro Council work session. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. At this point in time, Councilmember Yvetos Walton, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please stand if you're able to. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Aguilar.
Present.
Councilmember Azevedo.
Present.
Councilmember Bolt.
Here.
Councilmember Simon. Councilmember Simon is not here at the moment. Councilmember Viveros Walton.
Present.
Vice Mayor Bowen. Mayor Gonzalez.
Present. City of San Leandro conducts orderly meetings to fulfill its mandate. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and or the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, California Penal Code Sections 403 or 415 are per se disruptive to this meeting and will not be tolerated. Please see the City Council Handbook and City Council Meeting Rules of Decorum for more information. Madam Clerk, your announcement, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If you would like to make public comment during the meeting, you can do so in person or via Zoom. If you are present at the meeting, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the city clerk before the item is presented. If you wish to participate in public comment via Zoom, you can use the raise your hand tool when the item is called. During the public comment session, speakers will be invited to speak and will have a set time to share their comments. A countdown timer will appear for their convenience, and when the time is up, the microphone will be muted. All raised hands outside of public comment will be lowered to avoid confusion. Once public comment is opened, hands may be raised to speak. Thank you.
Okay, as today is a work session, we've got no action to take, but we will be hearing a presentation on emergency management preparation and our role in emergency management as elected officials. So we've got emergency services, I don't have a title, specialist. Libby Bassman to kick off our presentation today.
Not seeing the there I am. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to have this training specifically for you. I have opportunities to train city staff separately, so this is really geared for you. I want to make sure that I cover everything you need. Please ask questions. I've read this. I know that there's time for questions, but I think it's really important that we take our time and really go over what happens before an incident, during an incident, and then after an incident for elected officials. As you can see, fire, they're here, they do separate training, police does their own training, EOC staff, they have their own. So this is really a very special, thank you for letting me have this training opportunity with you. A little background about myself. I'm originally from Texas, from the Gulf of Mexico part of Texas, a barrier island. So I'm familiar with the resident side when it comes to an incident. I know about evacuation, shelter in place, planned incidents. So it's very important that that's understood in this presentation. I take that very seriously. My professional experience, I came from the city and county of San Francisco. I did emergency management there. I was part of active shooter, the UPS center, barricaded suspects, 4 and 5 alarm fires. But those are the non-planned incidents. There's also the planned incidences, Fleet Week, Pride, New Year's Eve, really big incidences. And every time it's the same. The way we train is the way we perform. So this isn't, this is universal. This happens all throughout the US. We all do emergency management incident, all the systems, the process is the same. So that's why it's even more important that I make sure you guys understand what your role is. So with that, next slide. So here are our goals. I want to review the principles and the elements of the National Incident Management System, NIMS. So if I start talking in acronyms, I apologize. That's NIMS, and then our Incident Command System, ICS. Explain the attributes and purpose of the Emergency Operations Center. Explore your role during the emergency. And then I want to review it. I want us to just do a very quick exercise to make sure that if there are questions, here's just a very quick time that we can kind of recognize what we need to do. And if there are questions, we answer the questions. All right. So why are we doing this training, right? Well, a lot's changed in a year. We have 2 new members. We've had kind of a lot of stuff happen. So I want to make a difference. I want to explain the difference in the everyday emergency versus the emergency. So the everyday emergency, and it is an emergency, it's a 2-car collision. It's a resident with breathing problems. The electrical wires are down. These are very quick incidents. It comes in, the first responders go out, they take care of it, and it's very quick. When emergency management steps in, it is a much heavier lift. It takes more time. So, some more recent incidents that happened, it was the international IT outage at CrowdStrike, right? We all remember our computers working, not working, who's working. Atmospheric river, I think we're due for another one, but not quite as severe coming up. And of course, we've had a gas leak, right? So there's a difference. How do we respond? So what is an incident, right? I've been throwing around the word incident, but what does it mean? This can be a human, technology, public health, or a natural occurrence that requires a response to prevent or minimize loss of life, which is our number 1 priority, damage to property, that's number 2, and or the environment. So human, we're all thinking like, what is the human? Big fire, right? A big fire happens. Excuse me. No, it's okay. It's the fires down in LA, right? It started, sometimes it's by human accident. Technology, we've already discussed CrowdStrike, that was pretty big. Public health, we all remember COVID. But that's not the only one. When there's a fire up north, the air quality impacts us here in the Bay Area. So that's going to be your health. And then a natural occurrence, atmospheric river, earthquake. These are all the examples of what an incident is. So we need to kind of get a framework of how do we respond to the incident. There are rules, there are regulations, there are systems, and there are locations. And this is when I really want to make sure that I explain every piece, because it all works together and it can all be a little complicated and kind of gummy when it's explained, but not properly explained. So first, we start with our rules and regulations. We have the California Emergency Services Act. So this allows us to proclaim a local emergency to enable special emergency policies, mutual aid, give special powers to the governor, volunteer programs and protections, planning requirements, and state and local agencies. So this is really giving us a lot of muscle, a lot of action. All right, so we have our rules, right? And it's meaty and it's long and it's a great cure for insomnia. So now that we have the rules, we need to really talk about what are our systems. So the first one we have is the National Incident Management System. This is NIMS. So what is it, right? It provides a consistent nationwide template which can be scalable and applicable for all incidences. This is used whether it's the fires down in LA, whether it's a gas leak here in San Leandro, whether it's a hurricane in Texas. We're all using the same system. Who is it? It's pretty much all of us, right? It's going to enable the federal, state, tribal, and local governments, the private sector, and the non-governmental organizations to work together. We're all going to speak the same language. How? We prepare for, prevent, respond to, recover from, and mitigate the effects of incidents regardless of the cause, size, location, or complexity. Why? And this is like why. Why is this so important? Because this is how we're going to reduce the loss of life and property and the harm to the environment, and a condition for federal preparedness funds, the money, right? We don't follow process, we will not be reimbursed. So I'm going to pause there. I've thrown acronyms at you, I've thrown code at you, I've thrown the first set of process. Any questions? And I know that I'm supposed to save questions for the end, but I just want to make sure I answer questions. All right, seeing none. Next system, it's our incident command system. So what is it? It's a standardized, on-scene, all hazards incident management concept. It allows its users to adapt an integrated organizational structure to match the complexities and demands of single or multiple incidents without being hindered by jurisdictional boundaries. So ICS is a widely applicable management system, and we can grow, we can shrink as needed. We can still communicate with each other, but this is local. This is how we work here in San Leandro. This is how LA's is operating. This is how when the hurricanes come through Houston, that's how they operate. It's a local system. So there's got to be benefits, right? If there's a system, there's a benefit. So this is going to meet the incident of any size, any complexity, anything, because it's scalable. It's the same process. This allows personnel from a variety of agencies to meld rapidly into a common management structure. So what's nice about this is I can go to LA and I can help. I'm a plug and play because I speak the same language. I know their systems. This means I can now ask for help. If San Leandro needs help, I'm going to ask for help and we can have help come in. But I can't have someone come into San Leandro, help, but they don't know how to talk to us. The lingo is different. If we make it so that this is San Leandro specific, our partners in Hayward can't help us. And they're right there, right? I can't have help from LA. I can't have help from anywhere. So this really is a nice way to plug and play. Provide logistical and administrative support to operational staff. This is where folks in the field, like police, fire, public works, they're going to say, I need help here, right? They're not showing up with any of the barricades. They're not showing up with potentially porta potties, food. What can we do to support our folks in the field? That's what this logistical piece is. Administrative support. It may be having somebody stand there and check someone in. So this is essential to have this type of coordination. And it's cost effective. It's not duplicating efforts to send 2 departments to respond to, let's say, shovels, right? They're all showing up with shovels. Now I've wasted a department's time, right? That's a very expensive. I could have utilized a department to move differently. So it really is a very easy, simple, efficient, cost-saving way to coordinate. All right, so what's the difference? National Incident Management System, that's national. Incident Command System, that's field, that's local. There's no special way. It's all the same. National Incident Management System, we all speak the same language. Incident Command System, we all speak the same language. And I really want to make sure how important that is. Because when the call for help goes out, I need to know I can bring help in. And when the call goes out like LA, I can send our people to help. All right, so let's talk about places now. First place is the command post. So the command post, this is a dedicated central location. It's isolated from noise and other distractions. It's going to determine the operational needs for the incident. This is comprised, and I really want to stress this, I've never been to a command post. And as long as I've been doing emergency management, I have not been to a command post. I'm just saying. Because this is invite only. This is a fast pace. They talk in their own language. I don't understand what the language is. I am not going to sit there and ask, hey, chief, what are you saying? That's not the appropriate place for anyone who is not a first responder. So it's really going to be the incident commander. It's going to be the staff that are working on the incident. It could be public works. It could be the sheriff's department. It could be the fire department. Those are the people who are responding. It is our responders, our operational staff. And then there's the liaison to the EOC, because the incident commander and the staff, they don't have the time to call over to the EOC director. They're going to talk, the liaison is the one who's going to be giving that information. And I promise you, it is a fast clip. They are moving fast. They're busy, right? They're just busy. And I don't mean to not underscore the importance of how fast it is moving. The other piece that I have never been, which is appropriate, is folks at the command center. They're there and they're safe. They're there in protective gear. They've been trained. You may say, well, I have a mask, right? Like we all have a stash of masks left over from COVID. That doesn't mean that it's the right mask. I can tell you that the folks out there have been fit tested for the right mask. So it's not just an N95. It's an N95 small. They've been fit tested. They have the right gear, whether it's smoke, whether it is there has been an earthquake and it's not safe to walk around. Their gear is protecting them. So if you have been invited, that's because you're supposed to be there. If you haven't been invited, it's not safe. And that's why we're really mindful of who is at the incident command post. Let me pause. Any questions? Sorry, that was a lot of passion. All right, no. All right, so the next location is going to be the Emergency Operations Center. We have two that have been identified in plans. One is Sterling Grant, and the other is the Senior Center. Right now, we use Sterling Grant as our default because of some technology upgrades that need to happen, and that's kind of one of my bigger projects that I'll be working on this year. But for now, we've got amazing technology at Sterling Grant. We have it ready to go. It's warm. We call it warm because it's ready to go. So, Emergency Operations Center. This is our physical location or virtual, because we can also activate virtually, designed to support the emergency response, business continuity, and crisis communications. Provides coordination, coordinates plans and determines current and future needs, coordinates recovery operations, collects, analyzes, and shares information, supports resource needs and requests, including allocation and tracking, and provides public information. All of this is happening at the EOC. So the incident command post, they're moving at a fast pace. The EOC is also moving at a fast pace because now you've got city departments, city partners, we've got county partners, we have private sector, we have the school district, we have everybody in there. It is a full house when it's a big incident. So the EOC is really busy. So why is it beneficial? I think you guys are starting to see the pattern here, right? So it's going to establish a shared situation picture. This is when the command post has the EOC liaison and they're talking to the EOC director. The EOC director is the one who's going to be able to share the information within the EOC. They're not the one, so this is how we all have a shared situation picture. It's going to simplify verifying information. So nothing is worse than, we've all seen it. Someone's on Nextdoor. Well, I just heard that, and now it's Facebook, and I've seen that. That's not tried and true. This is where tried and true information will be coming out of. This provides ready access to all available information. So not only is it simplifying it, but then this is going to be able to then reach out to you so that you can share it. So when you share on social media, when you share on Nextdoor, you can say, I have the best information. I didn't hear it from Susie down the street or Sam, my neighbor, or someone text me. They're not there. The EOC has that information, and that's the best way that you will get the information. And it also aids in resource identification and use. So if everybody needs the same thing, how do you determine who gets what? This is going to happen at the EOC. All right, so how do you guys fit in, right? This is the whole point of having this training. Wait for it. You guys are the purple box. You're the policy group. You are talking with our EOC director. That is the best source to get your information. So the EOC director, they're running the ship. They're overall responsible for the incident, and they're the ones setting the objectives. They have the EOC liaison who's communicating between the field and the EOC, as we talked about, and there's the command post. And I want to note how the incident command post, there's no connected line, there's no dotted line between the incident command post and the EOC director. The EOC director hears from the liaison. When we go down, the red is operations. They're going to develop all the tactical organization and direct all the resources that are needed. So this is going to be how, I need to set up a relocation space. They're going to need a space. They're going to need potentially security, maybe some food, depending on what's going on. Maybe they need something for children. Maybe they need translation services. Planning develops plans to accomplish these objectives set by the EOC director, and they're the ones that are going to be gathering all the documentation, all the plans, all the check-ins, they're gathering all that information. Logistics, they're going to provide the resources that operations said, hey, I need it. They're going to get the services as well. So if it is a translation service, logistics is going to find it. They're going to go to potentially city staff and say, can you translate this message for us? Finance, I think, has a tough job. They monitor the incident and they're checking money. They want to make sure that we follow process so we get reimbursed. That's huge. If we don't follow the process, we will not be reimbursed. They're going to provide that overall fiscal guidance. Let me pause because this has a lot of information on this slide, and the next one has even more. So any questions about this slide? All right. Yes. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Simon, please.
How do we find out who is the EOC director?
So we have an org chart. It's 3 deep. We train everybody in their position 3 deep. So we have backup. We have the EOC org chart. It's shared. And currently we have Janelle as first, Mike as second, and Tom Liao from Community Development is third. So you would hear from them directly. And then who shifted is, they're going to reach out to you. They'll tell you, hey, Supervisor Simon, I am EOC director. I promise you, it won't be a secret.
Okay, so Janelle, Mike, and the third one?
Tom from Community Development. Mhm.
Okay. And is that ranking always the same unless you're on vacation or something?
Exactly. We'll come over to city manager for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Simon. So yes, I am, and as councilmembers always know, I let you know, and I'm not going to be present or away. So if you haven't heard that I'm not here, it will always be me. And then I will most likely defer to Mike as our assistant city manager. And then Tom, so what happens, let's say I am here. And for example, the atmospheric rivers in 22, I think we were in the actual EOC and that lasted days. And so our city manager at the time had a shift. I think the shift was 12 hours, and then she had to get some rest, and then I came in and took the second shift. So it doesn't have to be just because we're not here. It could be also that the emergency has lasted so long that not one human can work the same cycle until it's over. But you will know, you will get an email and an update saying, status update, switching out as your EOC director, the next person is your next EOC director.
Thank you. And I have another question from a further back slide. On slide 6, the California Emergency Services Act. When was the last time that we implemented that? I mean, what event was it? I'm just kind of curious, how often does this happen?
So I say this, I'm still a little bit of a new employee. So it hasn't happened since I've been here. My best guess, and I can give you a better answer, but obviously COVID. Right? COVID was big. I believe there was an atmospheric river and there were some declarations the governor had, the county, and I believe San Leandro, the 22 atmospheric river, because I'm working with Cal OES and FEMA for reimbursement. So we've had to use that a few times.
Thank you.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for clarification, during the atmospheric river, EOC director was city manager. And who was the EOC liaison?
So to be really clear, I think city manager had said that the then current city manager for a period of time, then she as assistant city manager, just kind of kept rotating as people timed out, so to speak. But I think your question is, who was the EOC liaison, correct?
Yes, and that switches.
Presumably as well. So if you can just give the example for the atmospheric river.
That's an excellent question. And because it was so long ago and it was so hectic and so many people, I don't remember who was my liaison in that moment. But the liaison, unlike the director, most of the director will be the same exact person, especially for short emergencies. It'll be the city manager or whoever's acting. But the EOC liaison can change per the emergency. It depends on what the incident is and whose incident it is. So if it's a fire incident or a PD incident or a public works incident, the communication point person would be who's ever actually leading that incident.
And, or just clarification purposes, the policy group, that is the group that enacts policy of what we should do moving forward. How does the policy group function with the direction of the EOC director?
So policy group, let's say there's civil unrest. We're going to need a curfew. We're asking you guys for some help. You guys are going to say, okay, let's set curfew 8 o'clock. So it's going to be something, we need a declaration, right? City manager as EOC director is going to say, hey, you know what? This is a long response. We've got a lot of damage. We really do need to declare. EOC director will discuss this with you guys. We need you to declare. We have the form ready. But those type of big decisions, that's what we're looking at for policy decisions.
Like enforcing martial law, or heaven forbid, a National Guard in that sense. So that would,
Ooh, you make me nervous with that one.
I know, because we lose all control. I mean, that's just something that we've dealt with when we've had looting happening in San Leandro. But I just wanted to be clear what the policy group is, what they do, what their job is, and if there's any influence that we may have as council members to help guide policy.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have legal weigh in on the role of the policy group, and then we can continue that dialogue.
So I just wanted to clarify that municipal code provides the disaster regulations, and the emergency operations director, which is the city manager, or her designees, usually, in 99% of the instances, would declare the emergency, because the code provides that if the council is in session, then the council can declare an emergency. But session here means actually in a meeting. That's very rarely going to happen, that an emergency is happening. I'm not going to knock on wood right now. That you're in session, and then you could declare an emergency automatically without having a Brown Act or take an issue, a Brown Act meeting. So if it happens like it's happened in the past, the city manager proclaims an emergency, and then the council within 7 days is supposed to ratify it, whether at a regular or a special meeting. That's the policy. We're following the policies of the city at that point. The policy group also includes you as the council, but then there's also what you all know as the disaster council. The disaster council's role and our responsibilities are defined by the code, but the mayor and the vice mayor are members of the disaster council.
Thank you for the clarification. Those are my questions.
Hey, Councilmember Azevedo, please.
Yeah, with more and more natural disasters going on, yeah, this is really important. So just so we get this clear, as council members, kind of like what happened with the gas leak, we wait to hear from you, Janelle, unless you tell us that someone else is the EOC director, basically, in a response.
Correct.
Okay. So, and then, yeah, and then we'll see how we can help, I guess, and we do the policy, basically. Okay. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a comment when you gave the presentation, you said that the EOC director will communicate with the policy group. I just want clarification on when and what is communicated to the council members in a real-time emergency. Again, you talked about how busy the EOC center would be and everybody is, and so trying to just clarify the expectations for us, and then also how we can support accurate information being communicated out to the public.
So I'm going to let Janelle answer because she would be our EOC director. But the second question, you're going to steal my thunder if I answer it now. It's in there, I promise.
It's like the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Mayor, I'm going to actually ask if we can maybe let Libby go through the slides because some of this is answered in future slides. And Libby, maybe just hold the questions till the end of your presentation.
Gotcha.
That's fine. If you can proceed.
All right, so here is a lot. During an incident, how does it all work together? It's a lot. So I want to start from the bottom, which is the local, that's going to be the us, the San Leandro. There's going to be our incident command system. We have an incident command post. You can see the area command is established only when needed due to the complexity or number of incidents. But typically, it's the command post with the incident commander. And then if you move up a level, that's going to be the Emergency Operations Center. Now, I want to stay under the local column so you can see kind of the dotted lines and how complex it is. That is, you can see the communication based on the dotted line. The multi-agency coordination group, so this is going to be the offsite policy guidance, resource prioritization allocation. Some cities do this. It's a little complicated, but it's a multi-agency kind of coordination. So that's local. That's going to be the first column on your left. And then you move bigger and bigger and bigger. It goes state, and then it moves to multi-state region, and then federal. So it's the same process. You'll see instead of the Emergency Operations Center in the center column or the center row, it's the State Emergency Operation. That's going to be in Sacramento. There's a joint field office. You can see where it really starts to, for lack of better words, explode. It really gets huge. And then it can move all the way on to the National Operations Center. That's when COVID happened. That's when you're going to get that level of response. On the left, you'll see the arrows up and down. That's the Joint Information System. That is the more of a PIO, how they communicate up and down. The Joint Information System would be pushing out messaging. So typically that's going to be our public information officer. But it could be in partnership with other departments. It could be in partnership with county, depending on the incident. It could be in coordination with PIOs for other organizations. Maybe it's a utility, the school district. It'll all depend on the incident, but it is the system of communicating to the public. They will craft the message. They will have the same message. They will share the same message. It's very coordinated. All right, so this gets to you. What do we need from you? What do we need from you as a resident? And then what do we need from you as the elected official? So if you're not ready, then the city's not going to be ready. So I really wanted to talk about first how to get you ready. So it starts at home. And I'm going to ask, are you registered Nixle? And are you registered with Nixle 1 zip code, 2 zip codes, all zip codes? So if you're not, this is an excellent opportunity to register 888, 777, and the zip code. This is also the time where you may want to tell your family members, register for the notifications. PD does a phenomenal job of sending out messaging. This is going to be if you have other family members that aren't local and they want to know what's going on. I think this reduces a lot of what I call at home the mom drum. I have 3 kids and it's always mom, 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 mom. This reduces a lot of the chatter in the background so everyone knows what's going on. All right, so now that I've asked who's registered for Nixle, who's following the social media accounts? Who's following Facebook, Instagram, X, Next? These are all places that you can be ready. You'll find the right information because our PIO posts relevant and timely information. Do you have a go bag? All right. Go bag? Go bag? Yeah.
say the city did provide them. Was the city still providing them? Sorry. Because when I got on the council, we got it to go back. But sorry.
Sorry, it's my fault. Okay, so go bag. I have black bags, should you be here. But you found, and Mayor, I have yours. I just wanted to use yours kind of to show and tell. But this, I started your go bag. So in there is, it has a whistle and a flashlight. Because if you're in a space in your car, really, there's only so much you can yell, help, 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 right? And eventually you have no voice and there is no help. But you can blow the whistle. There's a light. So there's a little flashlight in here. There's Band-Aids. There's all sorts of information for you and when you're asked questions, because it's always, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't even know where to start. So I gave you guys all that. I'm not going to go over everything because it's a lot, but the piece I want to mention is in here, there's a family communication plan. It's the front, the back. I have one at my house. I have one with my family. So I just want to take a minute to say, here's your start of a go bag, and here are your resources to share with others. And then I think this is really big is, do you have a neighborhood plan? You know your neighbors. You know who speaks a different language. You know who has access and functional needs. You know who has kids, and if you have to wrangle your kids, they might need help. Have a neighborhood plan. It's essential that you guys communicate with your neighbors. All right. Now that you're ready at home, now is the time where we're going to ask you to help us. So the primary role of the elected official before a disaster is that you're prepared. Whether you're the mayor or a council member, you have the ability to guide our city towards effective emergency management planning strategies. Many folks give into the notion that emergency preparedness is too daunting, it's too much, I don't want to talk doom and gloom, so why am I going to even try? But it's the residents' expectation of you to always keep emergency management in your list of priorities when you serve. So here are the big pieces for you. This is before the incident, and it's a long list. So encourage individuals, families. Did I really run out of time? Family members, the businesses in San Leandro to register for Nixle, just like I encouraged you, right? 888-777, super easy to remember, put your zip code in. And then follow San Leandro's social media platforms. This is gonna be the best way for the general public to get the information. You, elected officials, will go to the EOC director, but this is the best way for the public. Make planning for emergencies and disasters a priority at all levels. So whether it is at a community event, whether it's the homeowners association, it's a priority. Meet with the city manager to learn about the hazards that threaten San Leandro and what's being done to address them. Encourage all government agencies and business leaders to coordinate and collaborate with the emergency services specialist, me. When needed, provide policy direction for emergency management related activities. Encourage individuals, families, and businesses in San Leandro to develop an emergency plan and be self-sufficient in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. Just for perspective, there's 90,000 residents. There's only how many hundred city staff? We cannot do it by ourselves. We need you to really go into the community and say, be ready. Have your go bag ready. Have water ready, canned goods ready. Obtain the necessary training such as CERT training and FEMA courses online to become leader to your constituents during an emergency. And then participate in trainings like this. So this is what we need you to do before the incident. And I really want to emphasize 90,000 residents, a couple of hundred, 400 city staff. It's essential for the neighborhood plan. It's essential to talk to neighbors. It's essential for you guys to help us do that. All right, so that's before the incident. Now we have the incident. The primary role of the elected official during the incident is that of support. As the disaster is occurring and the immediate response is underway, you will best serve San Leandro by empowering and allowing your first responders and us in the EOC the freedom to manage the incident as we've been trained. Allow us time to stabilize the incident. It's going to take time. It feels like why don't I know something now? But it's going to take us time. Give us that time so that way we know what's going on and we can give you the best information. And when I say we, I mean the EOC director. Your role as a decision maker will come, but the primary goal of addressing a disaster as it's happening is to stabilize the situation quickly and efficiently. So these are our big pushes that we need from you. Support and work with the EOC director is needed. This may include facilitating communication with and obtaining assistance from other agencies, declaring a local state of emergency, and issuing emergency orders. Communicate quickly, clearly, and effectively to your constituents, and allow the EOC director to contact you with incident updates. Serve your citizens by allowing the first responders and the EOC staff to manage the incident. Communicate with the EOC director to help you stay informed during the incident. Stay home and stay safe. That is huge. If you are running around, driving around, you may not get reception. You may be driving to a place that's not safe. Stay home, stay safe. Trust and empower your city staff to manage the incident. They're trained to do it. If there's any flooding reports with residences, here's the information to give them, right? During regular business hours, 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. Public Works Department, we've got 510-577-3440. We even have the app you can put in a request. And then, of course, there's after hours, holidays and weekends, 510-577-2740. So this is all during the incident. So I've given you a lot before of how we need you to help us in your roles. This is during, and now it's after the incident. So the primary role of the elected official after the disaster is that of leadership. Once the first responders and the EOC staff have stabilized the situation, your role as the elected official becomes crucial for the recovery process. So the community needs you. They really need you. The recovery for residents start with you seeing residents. Check on the businesses. Organize community groups to support and rebuild, right? That is supporting your community. Support your community through recovery, and it's going to be long. It may take a couple of years. It took us a while to recover from COVID, right? It depends on the incidents, but it takes time. Help them. Here in California, we view recovery a little bit different. In short term, it may be hours to days, right? There's a gas leak. That was quick. Intermediate, maybe weeks to months, and then long-term recovery, months to years. So I like to think that the short-term incident might be the gas leak, the medium, maybe an earthquake, and long-term, that was COVID for perspective. Help identify opportunities to rebuild and mitigate future demand through planning and smart infrastructure investments. This is where we need your help. All right, so as if I haven't said it enough, here it is again. How can you help us? There may be a communication plan within your neighborhood. Follow that. Follow your communication plan at home, right? It starts with you being ready at home. It starts with you being ready in your neighborhood. Locate your emergency go bag so you're ready to go. This isn't the time to try and find it. Be available for the EOC director to share updates with you. They have the best information and the most accurate information. Share the information the EOC director asks you to share. So it's a coordinated message. Everyone hears the same thing. Stay safe and stay home. I can't emphasize that enough. The EOC director will be communicating with you and needs you to be safe, right? If you're not safe, you're not sharing the message. You're not helping anybody. So now that we have done all that, it is exercise time.
So before going into our exercise, I'd like to do the remainder of questions. I'd like to do our public comment and have some discussion just about what we've heard thus far. We'll do the exercise and can do some debrief after. Let's talk about the presentation. So I'm going to come back to Councilmember Bowen. I think you had a question on the floor regarding communication, the when, how, or let's see, I wrote it in my notes. When and what is communicated in the communication? Is that still out there? You can reframe it as you want. Just punch in the red button.
No, I didn't know if there was any more specific clarification that city manager wanted to add to that. I really appreciate how specific the slides were.
Okay. So I will ask one question. Is there a goal for time frequency, every hour, every 3 hours, how do we think about answering that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the initial contact of an emergency, the goal is within the first hour of the director knowing of the emergency and turning into an EOC event. And I clarify that because if there is an incident that PD is working on, you will get, as you all get the PD alerts, that may not be an emergency that I'm involved in or the EOC is involved in. So that won't come from me. So we're just talking about EOC level events. So the first alert will be the first information. The goal is in the first hour of that event. So we've gathered enough information to share and we've vetted that information to make sure it is correct. From there, it really depends on the emergency. So for example, the tsunami warning was only about a 3 hour or less event. So I think you heard from me maybe twice or 3 times in that hour. For the atmospheric river events that lasted days, you may hear twice a day because I may not have much to say between 9 a.m. and noon. It's still raining, right? And so, and what some of you may remember at the end of the status updates, it will say next update. It'll give a time, or it will say to be determined, or it may say concluded of these updates. So it really depends on the emergency, but in the update, you should know when you'll get a next update.
Thank you. Councilmember Aguilar, please.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my questions is there's always some issue where, let's say, a city manager is on vacation in another country, or as council members are on, I travel a lot for work. And when the tsunami warning happened, I wasn't in town. So should we delegate somebody to be the next point of contact if we're not in our district as a council member?
Let me come to city
In that
manager.
sense.
Thank you. Let me come to city manager on that.
From a city perspective, there isn't a need for myself and the EOC to have a delegated person for your district, but you know your district better than we do and what they need and who may need. I think as Libby shared, you may know who has transportation issues, who has mobility issues. And so I don't know that. And so if you have a role where you support your neighbors in an emergency, that may be something you want to do. I will say, I think it was 2022 when a lot of the council members at the time were out of the country, we did have to, because the mayor was out of the country, the vice mayor at the time was out of the country, we did have to work with Rich, who's next in charge of the city when it comes to a policy body. And so that would be the most senior at the time. So that is where we do find a substitute, because we do have to have an elected at any time who is the one who can make decisions if the mayor, vice mayor is not here.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Hey, Councilmember Bolt, please.
Yes, thank you. Learning a lot. So obviously, this presentation isn't going to make, well, I'll speak for myself. It's not going to make me an expert on these issues. And there, some of the questions I wrote down, like, is someone going to call us? Should we call? Yes. It's, same thing we have now is great. There was a slide though that I like, if you could go back to where you had the list of people and then the policy up on the left in the purple, because it illustrates in my mind exactly what's going on. This isn't funny, but when I first initially saw it, it's very clear. Everything over here, solid lines, all on half of the page. And then you got the policy group over here on the left. And the idea is stay out of the way.
Yes.
Until it's time. There's even a dotted line instead of the solid line. It's a color, right? And so I get that. And I like that because it's being very clear about Dylan. You don't need to go down to the command center. You're not going to do anything that's going to change the position.
unless they call, like you said. If I'm invited, that's different. And so I really do appreciate that. I want to clear up two things just in my mind. Number one, you were talking about social media. The EOC, will they be specifically, putting out on these different social media platforms? I know you said we could share stuff or you could talk to us, but it'd be awesome if we did that as a city, and then if any one of the council members chose to reshare, fine. Is that the way it would work?
So the PIO posts on social media. The team does a fantastic job of clear information and translated, right? So it's not just English. Feel free to hit share, retweet. I don't know if that's the right word anymore because it's X, re-X or whatever it is. Yes, that's the absolute best. Just share it.
Right. Okay. Got it. So it's not like I have to, Tim the Toolman Taylor saying the completely wrong thing that he just heard over the fence. I'll be able to reshare. Okay. And I like all this, and I think we're going to get into it, but what about drills? Like, you did earthquake drill in elementary school. I mean, we have the east side of our city at risk of wildfire. We have the west side of our city at risk of flood. We have both major issues can hit this city at any given time. Is there an idea that we would do drills to help those specific areas think about that process and what they would do?
So some of that has to be baby stepped, right? It's a big coordination piece to ask folks to Saturday morning evacuate, right? It was a lot on a holiday weekend to ask folks to evacuate. Even if it's planned, it's a big, big step. So yes, there is discussions of doing that. The EOC city staff, we practice that. We do trainings. We know how to respond. There are times where city staff, they're notified of the training and it's going to be a drill, and then not to share, but it will be a time they'll be surprised, right? So when it comes to evacuating the city and the drills, we're working on it, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of coordination. We want to be mindful of what we're asking our residents to do.
100%, I agree. And would we get 100% participation? Probably not. But, even if you got 25%, imagine the relief you would have during the evacuation time if 25% already knew, and you can eliminate that. And so my idea is we do this, it's not a good idea, but it's an idea. We do these national night outs, right? What if we did a citywide emergency evacuation night, right? This year we're going to practice the east side fire. Next year we're going to practice a west side flood. Just something to think about. Okay, I'm good there.
Councilmember Simon, please.
Thank you for the presentation. A lot of information, and you did a nice job getting it out clearly. So thank you. My first question or comment, and I heard it clearly, stay safe and stay home. However, just kind of talking through an incident, we had the gas leak incident, and an emergency shelter was set up at the Marina Community Center. And during that incident, I communicated with Janelle and the mayor, and then we got to the community center to show support to our community. So we didn't stay home, but we showed up at a public gathering area set up just to show support. And I take it that's okay. That's what we want to do, is show support that we are there if we're in town, of course. Is that the asterisk on the slide?
I'll go to city manager on that.
So Livy, our emergency services specialist, her presentation is kind of large ranging, and it's more of a presentation on the general plan, but depending on the emergency. So for example, it's not like an atmospheric presentation, a gas leak presentation, a tsunami presentation, but depending on the emergency, there can be changes and some relaxation. So if it's an atmospheric river, stay home. We don't want council members or community members on the roads risking their lives. There is no safe other place to go besides the location whether that's home or someone else's house or an inside place, that's safe for you. But in the sense of the gas leak, I was able to know that it would be okay and safe for council members to go there. If I felt that was not the place to go, I would definitely share that with council members, that this is not a great place to go.
Okay, so stay out of danger, essentially. Okay, got it. Okay. And the next question related to that, I kind of missed the part about mobility issues. And again, the gas leak, there was some seniors were picked up by police, they were picked up by city staff and brought to the community center. Is there a, is that the normal plan, or is there a more formulated plan on how to get seniors or mobility challenged people out of, whether it's gas leak or a fire in the hills or a flood? It's a big task. I'm just curious, is there a,
It is a big task, right? I honestly, I can't say that there's one plan to collect everyone who has a special need to leave. The needs are different, right? There's wheelchair, there's a cane. So I honestly, I don't know how to move everybody. I don't know that there's a good plan to move everybody who needs it. I think that's where the neighborhood has to have a plan to support each other. I think if I know my neighbor to the left has mobility issues, I need to step up as their neighbor and help them, because I can't rely on staff, first responders to get everybody. They're going to do the best they can. PD does a fantastic job of assisting. Fire does a fantastic job of assisting. They can't reach everybody.
yeah, you said 90,000 residents and 400 employees. So the math doesn't work. Now, as far as block captains go or neighborhood watch, I know some neighborhoods have them, some don't. Is there any, are we tracking who is actively having block captains? And then perhaps they could help know or track who has mobility issues? Are we getting into that detail?
Not yet, but I think that's neighborhood specific. I think, people move, people's interests change. So I think it's also difficult to track. I'd like to know. It'd be easier for coordination, but I am not tracking that.
Okay, is that a concept or that we could consider perhaps? I know we're not, but as far as knowing what block captains are active, just so we have an idea of our mobility challenges, because it sounds like we're relying on a neighbor to know a neighbor, but I don't know if there's a more organized fashion.
So I think just one thing to keep in mind is that we do have some resilient centers, and we do actively track those as part of emergency preparedness. I think it's an interesting takeaway. Should each of those centers then cascade down to block captains? So I think just food for thought on how we might expand the resilient center role in connection to the even a more local level.
Okay, I have one more question, but I have 8 seconds. Should I wait? Go. Okay. My last question, I missed or can refresh my memory on the updates. I know, Janelle, you had called on updates. There were emails coming out too with updates for like the gas leak. There are regular email updates coming out. Is that the process in addition to you calling us?
City manager.
So yes, most likely what will happen in areas where a specific district is notified. So for example, the gas leak, I know the first notification came through Nixle and then PD sent out an email. I think AC Torres was the one who sent an email out on the council notifications. And then I also spoke with Councilmember Simon. I spoke with you. I spoke with the mayor because these were districts that were directly affected. Councilmember Acevedo called me. But for council members where, unless I'm directly called, if it's not your specific district, I will go through the email notification portion.
You said you will?
Yes.
Okay.
So same thing with the tsunami, I called you directly because you're right on the water. It's your district. Your neighbors are going to ask you questions, and you may have direct questions that other council members may not have because they're not directly affected by this one emergency. So I definitely take that extra step when it is in a council member's district. If it's citywide, then I do our emails and everything, but that is why in those specific instances, those two happen to be in your district, those emergencies.
Okay. And then email updates to everyone so everyone knows what's going on. Okay, good. Thank you.
Councilmember Viveros Walton, please.
Thank you. One of the questions I had was some of the feedback received. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And also, I just want to acknowledge the city's willingness to have a feedback loop. There was a feedback session with the community regarding the gas leak on the west side of town. So thank you for that. I'll save some of my comments because I'm really interested in understanding what the lessons learned were there. Because there was, evacuations, there was that particular part of town has a lot of multilingual and monolingual residents, multi-generational housing, like multi-generational folks living in the same household. But one of the things that I wanted to ask was, I also want to confess that during that day, I called the chief and it was a 10-second phone call. Do you need an extra set of hands at the community center? And the answer was no. Click. Totally get it. Thank you, chief. You were very busy. But I guess the lesson learned there for me was the email did not say, don't come. You're an extra, but it was very general and and I have family members that live in that area. So I wasn't sure if there was an extra set of hands, which is why some council members showed up to the facility, because there wasn't clear direction on what not to do or what to do. It was just the incident happened, it's major, period, next update. And then the following updates were really through Nixle. So I just some feedback there. I just in terms of as the former PIO for the city, I know to stay out of the way. So which is why I just called and said, okay, fine, I won't be in that area. But the communication, at least, and I just reviewed it just now, there wasn't clear direction on what to do or not to do as a part of the policy group. So it's just some feedback there. And just to pull the thread on some of the comments from my other colleagues on the dais, my district encompasses the east side of the city, which has a really high fire risk. And the part of the city that is below the hill, there's been a lot of lines or kind of dotted lines that have happened through the LA fires, right? Where fire moves really quickly, even in densely urban areas. I'm just wondering to Councilmember Bolt's comment around having some of these drills. How can we help communities other than the resilience hubs that are happening throughout the city, knowing your neighbor, but are there any specific trainings or resources that the community can access to train for these kinds of incidents and how to evacuate, how to protect your home to make it more fire resilient? Just wanted to pull that thread a little bit more since that's a particular concern of mine.
So resources, you can go to FEMA.gov. I think there might be something in there to how to make my house more resilient. That I think FEMA addresses it pretty well. I'm trying to think. When it comes to doing drills and exercises, like I said, it really, baby steps. I think we really need to be mindful in how we do it, when we do it, that type of thing. So I don't really want to go that far because it just takes a lot. I think the Resilient Hubs do a nice job of having these discussions. I go to their meetings and they talk about bringing someone in. How can I make my home better? How can I help my neighbor? I mean, that's kind of the best I have right now, I think. Unless anybody else wants to step in, but I think it's really a hard lift.
I know that fire is involved in evacuation determinations, if I remember correctly. So why don't I go to Chief Bowie and See if you'd like to elaborate there a little bit.
I mean, I can just speak, it's such a situation dependent with so many of these emergencies, and it's really a fire and PD coordination when we evacuate. For evacuations, drills can serve a purpose, but in having people physically get in their car and try to drive somewhere, it will most times result in gridlock. We know that. I think the best people can do is prepare their go bags, have a family plan, and we keep going back to the same things. But it's the community, it's the neighborhood, it's the resilience. Having that family plan, having their go bags, knowing that hey, if we get our alert, here's what we're doing, and here's where we're going, unless told otherwise, right? Because the evacuation routes really depend on the incident, but it could be something where your family needs to have that alternative destination. We're all going to meet here. You know, we lose our cell service, stuff like that. Having everything is pre-planned as much as you can, just shy of actually having, you know, half the city get in their cars and try to drive somewhere. In my experience, that is the best we can do. And we can provide some more information, definitely provide CERT training, there's a lot of great information, especially along like preparing your house for, you know, I'll speak for fire preparedness. There's so much information coming out now, protecting your vents, zone zero concept, and I can elaborate about that later, but the pre-planning is really huge. I can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you. Just one last question regarding, it sounds like our main avenue for informing folks about an incident, whether they need to evacuate or shelter in place, is through Nixle. What happens? I mean, we have a large senior population, or maybe even folks that just don't have, that just don't, you either don't know about Nixle or just don't use smartphones. What are we doing? How are we working through that? My experience in the Manor neighborhood was that there was like a speakerphone, someone driving through the streets and with a speakerphone. But in the event of a fire, for example, we might not be able to do that because there's fire, so you're trying to get people out. So what's the plan for folks that don't use Nixle or can't use Nixle based on the language or access or just don't have a smartphone?
So there is AM 1610 for those who still have radios. Your cell phone can also, not that if they have they're not using a smartphone, they're not going to, but usually the folks that don't have electronics, they do still have their radio. So that is one way. That's probably, if they're not going to sign up through Nixle, there are other ways, and I always say Nixle is tried and true. She can answer better.
Thank you. So I'll be specific right now for the gas leak incident. Not only did we make PA announcements throughout the duration of the incident, we also did door-to-door neighborhood checks to evacuate people that may have been hard of hearing or had mobility issues. We also did press releases. We did updates with KCBS every 30 minutes. We did an on-camera interview, so either through TV, smartphones, or in person. We also have a feature through our 911 system. We can do reverse phone calls to the affected neighborhoods where we can make actual phone calls to landlines to notify people of incidents. So we have several mechanisms in place for notifications.
Okay, and then
Thank you.
over to City Manager to add a little bit more color.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Councilmember Veras-Walton. Just another thing on Nixle. Nixle also calls residential lines, like hard lines, so you don't need to actually have a cell phone to sign up. You can, I know, I've got grandparents, their landline is their life, and they're not leaving it, and so that also works that way. But I just wanted to provide an anecdote and thank PD for the work, just thinking about the gas leak. I actually got a complaint from a couple residents that PD banged on their door so loud in the gas leak that it woke them up. And I was like, that is so amazing. I'm so proud of our team because that is exactly what they do. They go through the neighborhoods. And I just want to appreciate all of our first responders because they put themselves in harm's way to make sure that our community is safe. So whether it's a fire or a gas leak, they will be the ones going into danger to make sure our residents are able to get out of danger.
I'll add one additional piece of color. I know that during our meeting at the Marina Community Center, a resident had raised a concern about AM 1610. And I guess it is factually true that in December, that might not have been fully functional, but that has been remedied subsequent to that point in time. So that issue has been identified and addressed. Coming back to coming back to Councilmember Simon, please.
Yeah, just kind of follow up on the follow-up meeting that was held after the gas leak incident. I guess that was last week? Yeah, last week. Yeah, that was a good meeting. Councilmember Rivera Walton, you had asked kind of some of the information that came out of that. The mayor just mentioned a bit, but also sirens, the information of sirens came up, and some folks that have lived in the manor in the city for quite a while know of these sirens on big, I think they're yellow poles, towers. I know there's one on Llewellyn, there's probably others. Do we have I suppose the city's working on this now, but do we have a plan to show where all these tower sirens are? Will we be practicing these sirens? And I also heard that there was a sequence of sounds or tones from these sirens historically, where certain like SOS type of beeps would come out, or a different meaning a fire, or some other beep would come out meaning a flood. Do we have any developments on the siren, or will we be coming up with more information on the sirens?
So we'll start with Director Marquisas on this one.
Good evening. I would have to follow up on those sirens. I do believe we have some around town, and I don't know if anybody of the team, they do require regular testing. And so I will have to get more information on that.
Okay.
And so, and the other piece is my recollection, your recollection might be different, is that one of our residents had suggested, wouldn't it be nice, since we have this giant loudspeaker, wouldn't it be nice if we had different tones, as opposed to just what I call the police siren sort of up and down in a sine wave. And so that was the suggestion, and I think it's certainly something worth it looking into. So we train our residents. If you hear this tone, this means shelter in place. But if you hear this tone, it means get the heck out of there.
Right. And the other kind of comment that came up was folks that don't hear, because a lot of seniors, I won't say a lot, but some seniors, their hearing isn't that good, or they may take their hearing aid out at night. So, that's just a challenge we'll have to figure out, whether it's knocking on a door or cell phones may not get to them. And the last one, an interesting comment that was brought up was an Amber Alert, because when an Amber Alert goes off on your phone, it's like a screeching noise where you just don't turn it off. Where some residents said that, well, their phone went off and they kind of ignored it because they thought it wasn't that much. So I thought that was a pretty good comment. So just wanted to share. Thanks.
Councilmember Bolt.
Do we still test the sirens every Wednesday at noon? I guess that's a no. So I remember growing up as a kid, those things used to go off every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, but we knew it was a test. So, and you could hear it from anywhere in the city. I don't know how many there are, but there must have been at that time a lot. So maybe that's something we look at too, is how do we get back to that? Obviously, it's money.
Vice Mayor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. These are really great comments by my council colleagues. I think I mentioned this the last year when we did this presentation, and oftentimes I think the big gap is just the same way we're getting educated on it. It's the community maybe not being aware of what resources that they do have, especially like if you're not living in this world. I think it would be really important for us to proactively get out as many resources as we can to the public. And a few years ago when the city held its first emergency preparedness community resilience conference, and I was running an organization. My role in that was to bring communities to the city and get information out. And one of the things we did was actually go to the firehouse with kids and families, and we learned what you do in an emergency. And I know that if you go to Alameda County Fire Department's websites, you can sign up for any number of trainings from 2 hours to, it says 20 hours, to be able to be much more aware of like what's happening around you. And we talked about the fire risk. We talked about signing up for My Genesis, so you can learn what zone you're in and what you need to do and whether or not you can leave down these streets. All of this is just a lot of information that you can't really keep in your head. So if there was an easy laminated thing that we can give out, or maybe once a year we put that in the San Leandro Times, that you literally just put on your, so that people have cut out or can put on their fridge so that they know this. One of the things that I was given at that event too was a red and green plastic door hanger that you actually put in front of your door to say like, I need help or I'm okay, so that first responders can come by and go in and help. If there's maybe a senior in there, then you can kind of go in there and know like they need more mobility. But I wanted to mention a few different resources too. Obviously, we talked about FEMA. I know the city has run a few different emergency preparedness events. I know the mayor and Supervisor Tam are hosting one as well. And I think the more those that we can do, the better. There's also ACL.gov, which is the Administration for Community Living. And so this is actually emergency preparedness for older adults and people living with disabilities. We've talked a lot about what resources that they need. And so if we can direct this specific communication to these different constituency groups, because at the end of the day, all of us sort of have to play a role in it, but it's easier if we know where to look and what to do. And I think if we can work with not just our resiliency hubs, but our schools, as well as potential, and certainly like when we get messages through Peach Jar that goes out to every single family that's in the district, that information goes a really long way. And so even if we just put in a notification through there about what resources the city provides, and also to work with them to do some emergency training. We have, like the great shakeout that happens every single year, but maybe there's ways to get people more activated with those projects.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions before we go to our public comment. The first one will start with the chief. I know that as a general principle, when you've got these large incidents, you do an after-action report. I'm going to assume that there was one. I think you even mentioned it at our community gathering. Hoping that you can share some of what you learned from your most recent incident.
Yes, after every major incident, we do an after-action report. And the purpose of it is not to pat ourselves on the back and talk about what a great job we did. It's actually so we can figure out what our lessons learned are and how we can improve and be ready for the next incident. So as it relates to the gas leak, a couple of things came out of that debrief. We realized that the Nixle auto call feature was not utilized during the incident. It was an oversight and it was an error. However, we did manage to reach 58,000 residents during this incident through Nixle. They were notified either by email or text message. So obviously communication is very challenging in any rapidly evolving situation, and we realized that we needed to improve upon that. We also realized that we needed to improve our messaging in different languages. We were not able to respond quick enough to translate our messages into multiple languages. And we are right now working on a plan to make sure that we're ready for the next incident. Also, we discovered that during our initial and subsequent messaging, we did not provide the evacuation map to people that were affected in the area. It was not on purpose. It was just an oversight. So again, for future incidents, whether it's a gas leak, a fire, whatever, when we send out messages, either through social media or through Nixle, or even for our media on-camera interviews, we will make sure that we provide our residents map of not only the affected areas, but also of potential evacuation routes.
Appreciate the courage to share. Did we happen, I don't know who this is directed to, I'll start with city manager. Did we activate the EOC for the PG&E gas leak?
Yes, we did.
Very nice. And thank you for the communication on that. Everything else I have, I think are more like comments. So I'm going, yes, certainly.
Just for clarity of my answer, when we say EOC activation, I believe Libby mentioned this, that can be in person here at Sterling Grant or at the senior center, or that can be virtual, which is normally the case, because in a lot of times it's not really, it does, in some situations, it doesn't help the emergency for us to all travel to San Leandro or leave our location. As I mentioned in the atmospheric river, we would do something like that virtually as well.
Okay, the rest of mine are comments. I'm going to go to public comment. I don't know if we've got public comment on this item, but if we do, let's take that now.
Mr. Mayor, we have one public, oh, no, we only had one public comment in person and no hands up online. There was a hand up earlier, but it's down.
Please proceed.
We do have one online. Her hand is back up.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank the mayor for putting together the meeting that I actually was able to attend last week on the response to the last gas leak disaster. And I want to point out that wildfire is the most critical disaster that we're most afraid of, 3,500 members, residents in Bayo Vista. I wanted to also let you know that it is the #1 priority right now this year in trying to prepare us for that kind of a fire disaster. I've talked to Chief Bowie, and we plan on having block captains. We have a lot of people who are in wheelchairs and in walkers. We have a lot of non-English speaking people. We have young families. We have a lot of people that do not have smartphones or computers. So we need to be able to identify them, and we need to be able to help them. We're going to be asking a lot of you to come to our Zoom meetings, our first responders. Libby, thank you so much for this, and helping give people the resources that they need in the event that we have a disaster. But we also need your help, because I think that I have full confidence in our first responders that if we have an incident and in the EOC, they're going to be doing a great job. But we need to prepare for this. I love the idea of drills. I've talked to Chief Bowie about doing one in our community. Unfortunately, she's not thinking that this is a good idea because we know that it's going to end up in gridlock. We know it's going to end up in gridlock. We do not have enough ways to get out of our community. And we've got basically two areas. And the mayor has actually said, we need a plan. How are we going to get 3,500 residents out those 2 areas? I mean, are we going to use CHP to stop the freeway so that people can get on the freeway? We need to have a plan, and it needs to be communicated to our residents. We need to know how we're going to do this. If not, we're going to end up like Pacific Palisades, where people are panicked and we don't have a plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we will now go online.
Thank you.
Jenny Madsen, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. So I had picked my hand down, but what Kat said is very important, because I've lived through several disasters, not in San Leandro, but the one I'm working out here is earthquake. And during an earthquake, every gas water heater will come on. And I need to know that the city knows that PG&E can turn them off or can't turn them off. I'd like some discussion about that. But what Kat said, we need to know what our evacuation routes are. And I've actually asked that since 2013 here. It changes. And it's not just up in the hills. There are neighborhoods down here that really only have one way out. and it's a small road, and I'm also a senior citizen who doesn't go on doesn't have a smartphone and doesn't go on social media. I used to get phone calls from Nixle, but now I can only get them on my computer. AT&T took away my landline, and that is going to happen to a lot of people. In talking to neighbors, one of the things that was mentioned was that if the police had a recording in multiple languages that they could play as they drive around, that might, you don't have to have translators on site. You can just have a recording that says, stay put, leave, or something very simple in multiple languages. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, there's no more public comment.
Okay, so we'll close public comment. We're going to come back and just kind of wrap up a little bit of council member comment on the presentation. I could tell some people were holding some of their comments. Let's go ahead and offer those final comments, and then we'll go into our tabletop exercise. Okay, seeing no comments, I did have a couple. I just want to highlight comms is really important. And obviously, first responders will do what first responders will do. But from a resident's perspective, one of the biggest challenges is that people feel like they're in the dark. We heard it at our session, and we hear it regularly when people complain about something. It's like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. And so in the absence of information, people create information, and then they post it. Social media offers them an opportunity to post information. So I think the best way to address that is frequency of information, even if we have little to update with. It's 9 o'clock and they're continuing to work at shutting off the gas. It's 10 o'clock or 9:30, they continue to work. Whatever that time, just give people, we can say we have no new information, or we can say it in the positive, they continue to do stuff. I just think that I heard too many people at the Marina Community Center saying, on Facebook, I read that, And that information was kind of like circulating around the room. And that's happening on a much grander scale throughout the city in the cases of an event. So I would err on the side of saying, this is what we know more often, even if it's exactly the same information. The second thing that I would offer is just the importance of that evacuation map. I think Councilmember Simon shared with me 2 different maps that had come out on the news. And I think that they were even different from what was on Genesis. And so really being able to know what that single source of truth is and recognizing that can evolve. And so our map has evolved, and now it's area such and such and such and such. And that's okay. That's a reason for an update. This situation continues to progress. There's now a larger evacuation area, or no, it's been determined that the gas main is smaller than originally understood. And so we're shrinking the evacuation zone, whatever the case happens to be. But again, what is that single source of truth? And the last thought that I'll offer is the importance of templates, whether it's pre-recorded multilingual messages, whether it's, in case of tsunami, here's the press releases that we're going to be doing. In case of large-scale active shooter and large-scale looting event, large-scale fire, here are pre-canned messages that we are ready to issue. We don't need to create them, or there's only 2 pieces of information. We want the street address, or we want the time for the next update, and we can just plug and play and move very quickly. Because I do think that in crisis, we don't want to be creating things. So I would strongly encourage us to move towards templates, particularly multilingual templates, because that will help bolster confidence on the part of our residents. Councilmember Bolt.
Yeah, I think I just want to go back, and I know I'm being cautious about going too far into it, but evacuations, although you say everything would be gridlock, 100%. That's what's going to happen in the emergency. But we would learn so much about ways to alleviate it in real time just by going through that process of it being gridlock. And we're going, oh my God. And then I think it would serve two goals there too, because then people in the neighborhood who hear gridlock and think gridlock, if they actually sat through a drill, they're not going to sit through it in emergency. And the first time we go to tell them to evacuate, they're going to go because they don't want to be in gridlock. So instead of shying away from it because it would create gridlock and maybe it's a long day and maybe it's a lot of work, that might be exactly what we need to get them into that moment when we're saying, hey, it's time to go. And they go, oh, I don't know, it's not close enough. If they sat through gridlock one time, they'd go, you know what? I don't want to deal with this no more. So I'm just trying to encourage us a little bit more instead of just stopping short of it because it would create gridlock. That's what's going to happen. So let's work on it.
Okay, so at this point in time, we are going to move to our tabletop exercise. I'm calling it tabletop. I don't know if it's really a tabletop, but there we go. It's our exercise.
Turn my mic back on. All right, here we go. So here's your incident. A traffic accident at 14900 Zelma near Manor Boulevard involving a tanker truck causes a large release of chlorine gas into the surrounding area. First responders are on scene and have requested activation of the Emergency Operations Center. So here are your assumptions. Current projections have the plume reaching to the Oakland airport and will require a shelter in place until deemed safe. This incident is happening now, and it is expected to last several hours, so at least 8 hours. Got to make it interesting. Based upon your position, who would you be communicating with? How are you communicating? So I'll pause there. Who are you communicating with?
City manager.
EOC director, yeah. Okay, how are you communicating?
I think that's my district. My or Victor's district, depending on exactly where. So I would wait for Janelle to call me or Victor on the phone with an update. Emails looks like to everyone, so everyone knows what's going on.
Perfect. All right. Based on what you've learned today, what critical services and assistance can you provide? Don't be shy.
Okay. Well, services to provide would be to provide services to the city manager, which she needs us support from us. If it's policy, which would be policy making. So if we need a policy making decision, we provide. If there is a evacuation shelter someplace, we can go and provide support to support the community. But out of danger, we keep out of danger.
Yes. You can also share information, right? When the EOC director provides information and says, this is information you can share that. You can reshare information on social media. Yeah. All right. So what's one thing that you won't do?
Leave where you are. You shelter in place, right? Because there's a plume. You just stay where you are unless you are directed to leave.
Nailed it.
Don't go to the tanker.
Do not go there. Do not go to the scene. Correct. Thank you. All right. I think that all the questions have been answered, but had to end it with a question slide. I just want to take a moment and say thank you all. I know that this was a lot of information at once, and I'm really grateful to be able to give this very specific training to you guys. I think it really makes a difference. So thank you very much.
Okay, so with that, it's 8:34 and we are adjourned.